We're here at another week of Save the Date. I'm sorry that we're still doing this online, but I'm really glad to be able to still share scripture with you guys and share some of the wisdom that's coming from our talks during these next few weeks. I do want to recap a little bit of where we've been the last few weeks. We've been discussing dating relationships in this series called Save the Date. We all know that dating relationships are different than any other type of relationship, and here's one way it's different. When we're in dating relationships, we throw common sense out the window more often than not. And you've probably seen this in others, or maybe even experienced it in your own life, where it seems like in every other area of life, this person that you're looking at is smart as a whip. They got everything under control, straight A student, wonderful extracurriculars, like awesome people. But when it comes to dating, it seems like they just became dumb overnight. You know, they say things like, bro, I've never dated anybody like her before. She's so awesome, she's so different. And you're like, dude, yes you have. The last 3 girls have been exactly like her in personality and looks. Branch out. Or that girl that says, there isn't anything going on between us, nothing's happening. And you're like, yes, there is. We can all see you flirting with each other. We can all see that you're like best friends on Snapchat. Come on, there's definitely something going on. Or even the age-old adage, we're different. Our high school relationship will last. Statistics say no, but good on you for being confident. And sometimes it's kind of funny when common sense leaves the window because some of the things that they end up doing, the baby talk and all of that, which can be annoying to an extent, but we get it. Sometimes it's sad because of the poor decisions that they end up making. And sometimes we just think, what in the world are they doing? What's happening? This is why often people talk about past dating experiences with regret. You know, it can be hard to tell if we're seeing the other person for who they really are and the time and place that you're in. But when we look back, we can see that our common sense went out the window when we started dating. And we can easily see it in others. It's just really hard to recognize it in ourselves. For example here, maybe you've seen a friend and they end up dating somebody with a poor reputation. You're like, they're kind of sketchy, they do some things, they're cutting class all the time, I don't know about that. And you judge them a little bit, but then you end up doing the same thing and you think, oh, it's a different story, I'm different than them. This is a completely different situation. This time it'll be different. Or maybe you see that you've talked to a friend before both of you started dating and you both had very clear physical boundaries for when you were going to date, but then they got into a relationship and they crossed the line. Not the best decision, right? And you judged them for it, but then you got into a relationship and you did the same thing because you said, well, this time it's going to be different. We're not going to go that far. Crossing the line physically seemed like more of a possibility once you hopped into a relationship versus when you weren't in one. Or maybe you have just like good, solid evidence that your friend's significant other was cheating on them. So you went and you told your friend, but they stayed with the person. They stayed with them and you're like, what? That doesn't even make sense. What is going on? But then you get into a relationship and the same thing happens and you say, well, he's different. This is an isolated experience. They're not going to do this again. In every other way, she's perfect for me. We all have to step back and recognize some things. We all tend to have these general rules about dating. You know, we don't date a cheater. Don't date someone who's going to bring you down. Don't date somebody who treats you poorly. Or someone who pulls you away from your family and friends and your values. But when we begin dating someone, when we catch feelings, those rules tend to become a little bit more loosey-goosey. They become a little bit more flexible. And we say things like, it's fine, it's just the way it is. That's how dating is. We say things like, hey, I got it under control. It won't get out of hand, promise. We say things like, I can handle these consequences. I'll be fine. And these views can cause us to make less than great decisions. So what do we do about it? How do we save our dating lives from regret? And I think turning to Scripture is always a helpful part for us when we look at any difficult question. And we're going to be in 2 Samuel today to address this particular question, looking at a story that involves arguably the most famous king of the nation of Israel, David. He was the youngest of the sons of Jesse, the least likely candidate to be the ruler over this nation, but God chose him. and he led his people. He was a great general, a sound leader, and he was called a man after God's own heart. So he had a wonderful relationship with God. And even though he had all of this credibility as a leader of Israel, he still made mistakes. So let's turn to chapter 11 of 2 Samuel. During this chapter, we see that the nation of Israel is against Ammon at this point. The Ammonites is who they're warring against. This is one of Israel's biggest enemies. And the king usually warred in these times, but not so with David. Let's see here in verse 1. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. They destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem. So it's weird. David's at home. He stayed back. He's saying to his army, I want my army to fight for my honor as the king. I want them to fight for our people, but I don't really want to do it this time. That's kind of his first bad decision. He's acted selfishly in this way. And being that he hasn't gone out to war, all of his friends are out fighting, all of his general buddies are out on the front lines, he gets a little bored. So late one afternoon, he's taking a nap. He goes out and he looks over this gorgeous city that he is ruling over, and he sees on one of the rooftops somebody bathing. It's this beautiful woman. It says he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. So he sends one of his attendants. He's like, go find out who she is. Go find out and tell me who she is. Something's caught his eye. He's got a bug in his brain. He's bored, and nothing ever good happens when you're bored. So keep that in mind. And this guy, he goes out and he comes back, and they say, she's Bathsheba. She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. So they kind of have an idea of where David's going with this. They're like, dude, don't do it. Don't do it. She is somebody's daughter, and she is somebody's wife. Don't do this. But the next verse tells us that David sent messengers to get her, and then she comes to the palace, and they sleep together. They sleep together, and she returns home. They do their one and done. She goes home. Later on, she discovers that she is now with child. She sends David a message, I am pregnant. And David should have admitted what he'd done at this point, but he doesn't. He kind of believes, I'm the king, I'm the top dog, I'm the exception to the rule. I shouldn't have to be held accountable for my actions here. So he sends word to his general, Joab. He's like, send me Uriah. Bring Uriah home. I need to talk to him. So they send Uriah home, and when he arrives, David asks him, how's stuff going on the front lines, buddy? He's trying to be all chummy with him. And to see how the war is progressing, and he tells Uriah after their conversation, he's like, go home and relax. And really what he's saying is, go home and sleep with your wife. He wants to cover up his wrongdoing. He wants it to look like Uriah is the father instead of himself. He even sends a gift to Uriah's home after this, after Uriah's left the palace. But here's the thing, Uriah doesn't go home. He stays at the entrance to the palace, and he ends up just bunking down with the king's palace guard. Why? And that kind of perplexes David, so he goes out and he's like, wait a minute, you didn't go home. What are you doing? What's the matter with you? And Uriah, he's an honorable man. He's not even an Israelite, and he's more honorable for the Israelite army and the principles of following this protocol than the leader of the entire nation. And he says, listen, the Ark of the Covenant and all of these armies, all my commanding officers, all those under me, they don't get to come home and relax with their wives. They have to be out on the front lines. How can you ask me to do that? And David's like, okay, I get it. I understand. Tomorrow you can go back. Tomorrow you can go back to the floor, to the war and everything. You'll be fine. Just stay here for another day or two. So Uriah stays the next day. He stays the day after that. Then David tries to get him drunk. He takes another step in a bad direction. He makes another poor decision. So he's like, maybe if I get him drunk, he'll go home and try to sleep with his wife. But Uriah, even in his drunken stupor, does not go home. He does the same thing that he did the last time he was with David, and he sleeps outside the palace entrance. And at this point, David, he's got to be frustrated because he's trying to cover up this wrongdoing, and he was believing still that he's the exception to the rule. He took advantage of his position. He took advantage of Bathsheba. And he's honestly, in trying to get Uriah drunk, took advantage of Uriah. And he's all throughout this, he had so many opportunities to own up, but he didn't do it. He still believed he was the exception. And if he couldn't switch Uriah's principles, he was going to take him out of the picture completely. And as we see in the next section of scripture, David does something pretty terrible. He makes, honestly, one of the worst decisions that he ever made. And he writes up a letter to address to Joab, his general, and he gives it to Uriah, and he says, go take this to Joab. And he takes it to Joab, and essentially what David wrote in the letter was put Uriah on the front lines. And it's because of this that Uriah ends up being killed with some other Israelite soldiers. He removed him from the picture, and soon after that, Bathsheba was married to David. And we read through this story, and we listen to what has happened, and we're like, seriously, David, what were you thinking? What were you doing? But the truth is, when we get into dating relationships, we act like this too. Maybe not to the degree of taking someone else's life or taking advantage of position, but we have the same judgment. When we're in the middle of a situation like this, we lose perspective. And we continue to convince ourselves that we're the exception, that we won't have regrets. We won't get caught. We can turn this around. We have control over it. We can make it right. We won't turn out like everyone else. We have a bond with this person that no one else can understand. But the reality is that when we think this way, we're in denial. We're wrong. We're stuck, just like David, surrounded by the results of poor decisions that we thought that we'd avoid. It's easy to see where David went wrong because we're not David. And we ask the question, why? Why did he continue to make poor decisions? And I'd say a reason is this. Throughout the entire ordeal, David asked the wrong questions. Over and over again, he asked what he could get away with. And every decision he made was through that perspective, was through that lens. And since he was the only one speaking into his decisions, no one was holding him accountable, he was able to excuse all of his bad behavior. After all, when we believe we're the exception, we can justify pretty much anything. We can say things that are okay when they definitely aren't. And this is true of dating. We have the tendency to justify bad situations and unwise choices. And hear me, that doesn't make you a terrible person. It makes you normal. We're all tempted to lean away from the truth when it threatens someone or something we like. But here's the thing. You owe it to yourself to be honest with yourself. You want to have the best life possible, especially when it comes to dating, because that's such a crucial part of our lives. But when it comes to dating, we have to ask the right questions in order to do that. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to ask, is there any area where you could find yourself thinking that you can get away with something? Or is there any area where you find yourself thinking, that may be fine for them, but it's not for me? Or maybe you ask the question, is there anything that makes you think you have things under control even when everyone else is saying differently? In other words, is there any area where you are not being honest with yourself? Because David was a king. He was a leader. He was a smart person. He had a relationship with God. But despite all that power and intellect and relationship, he got into a huge mess. And he realized he'd gone too far when a guy named Nathan spoke up. It took somebody else speaking into a situation for him to understand exactly what he had done. Nathan was a prophet at the time, and he had direct communication from God to direct the nation of Israel. And when everything had gotten completely out of control, he confronts David. And you can read more about that in chapter 12 of 2 Samuel. I'm not going to walk through it today. But he confronts David, and David listens. He got clarity when he wasn't able to see it for himself. We all need that person that will be honest with us when we're not honest with ourselves. So as we go forward in growth in this area of dating and in this area of life, honestly, this can apply to a lot of different situations. Look for these things. Find your Nathan. Find a wise friend or a small group leader, a trusted adult, a parent perhaps in the situation. Think about the people in your life and identify somebody who will shoot straight with you. Who will tell it to you like it is. And then ask them to help you. Help them. You say, help me see areas where I'm not honest with myself. Help me see areas where I'm not facing the truth in my life. You don't have to tell this person every single aspect of your dating relationship. You don't have to tell them every single aspect of your life. But you need to tell them enough that they're able to give you an accurate idea and tell you how things really, truly are. So find somebody, find your Nathan, ask them to help you, and then thirdly, listen to them. Seriously, listen to them, because if you ask them to do these things but you aren't willing to listen, their wisdom is wasted on you. Make a decision to let them say their piece, to allow them to be honest with you, even when it might be something that you don't want to hear. Being honest with yourself will save you so much pain in the now and in the later, and not just like 10 years from now, even in the weeks and months to come. It can save you a lot of regret and baggage, and to end up in a good place of dating, we owe it to ourselves to be honest with ourselves.